Welcome to EPG Pathshala program. I am Dr. Melissa Helen from Osmania University. Today we are going to look at a module from African and Caribbean literature. And we are going to consider a play, Blood Knot, written by a South African playwright, Athol Fugard. Athol Fugard was born in 1932. He has a mixed parentage as his background. That is, his mother was an Afrikaner and his father has Irish, English and French descent. And they lived in Port Elizabeth for a long time, which is reflected in many of his plays too. What is an Afrikaner? Or who is an Afrikaner? Afrikaners are basically the early 17th and 18th century Dutch settlers who came to South Africa. And interestingly, these settlers began to dominate the South African politics and agriculture. Let's take a quick look at a few biographical details of Athol Fugard, the playwright. He actually enrolled himself to do his philosophy and social anthropology in the University of Cape Town, but dropped out of the university in 1953. You know why I am mentioning this? This dropout actually won a number of awards and distinctions, and he even was awarded a lot of doctorate degrees from many universities. After he dropped out from his PG undergraduate course, he went on a steamer to North Africa. Then he married Sheila Mering. Later they moved to Johannesburg. After coming to Johannesburg, Fugard began to work in a native commissioner's court. Now this is a court that deals with apartheid system, and this sensitized Fugard to all the injustices of the apartheid system. Now interestingly, he joined the anti-apartheid movement and he was very active. The movement was active from 1959 to 1994. His works basically, if you look at it, he started off his career by working in a multiracial theatre where he played several roles. He was a writer, a director, an actor and a producer of several plays. Interestingly, he, as a slightly fair-skinned person, began to act with a black South African actor named Zakes Moke. And the play that we are going to consider today, Blood Knot, has these two performers or actors actually enacting the role. Later, influenced by Bertolt Brecht's production of the Caucasian Circle, Athol and Sheila Fugard together started a theatre group called the Circle Players, and which was of a mixed cast. But then again they moved on to form the Serpent Players in 1960, which has only black actors as their troupe members. Fugard's distinctions have allowed it to be possible for a theatre complex to be named after him, titled the Fugard Theatre in Cape Town in the year 2011. Interestingly, as his plays often opposed apartheid, he came into conflict with the government and was forced to stage his plays outside America. In fact, Blood Knot was actually produced in England, and it was banished and banned to be produced on the stages in South Africa. And his passport was confiscated. He was under surveillance by the government because he had a racially mixed group of actors when they were performing Blood Knot. Some of the themes that he deals with in his plays, such as Blood Knot, Sisvi Bansi is Dead, or Master Harold and the Boys, they deal with issues like hatred, violation of human rights under apartheid, particularly the influx control laws. These are basically meant to control all the people, particularly the black people, their lives. Interestingly, South African white minority were the ones who were holding on to the reins of the government. So they passed on an Immorality Act. You know what is an Immorality Act? It's not like what we think in our understanding today. That is basically an act which prohibits a white and a black person getting married. That is also called as miscegenation. And then interestingly, Fugard also wrote another play titled The Island that focuses on two cellmates, and this is inspired by Robben Island, the island on which Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 27 long years. Some of the plays of Fugard also deal with introspective and psycho-mythological plays. It's also interesting to realize that a number of plays of Fugard have a real life story as a starting point, or some of the plays have an autobiographical element, like The Blood Knot, and also The Captain Tigers, a memoir for the stage, and A Lesson from Aloes. Now, this play, Blood Knot, should be read or studied in the context of apartheid. What is apartheid? It is basically a system of racial segregation, that is, a separation of blacks and whites. What does it mean, and why did the white minority government in South Africa insist on this kind of a segregation? Well, basically, this was designed to keep the economic and the political power only with the white people or people from the European descent. And unfortunately, this system lasted for a long time, at least from 1948 to 1994. And the black South Africans were also under a lot of subjugation by various laws. The white minority government insisted on creating a pass law. What is a pass law? That means that the black South Africans could not move or live wherever they wanted in their own country. Imagine us being in that kind of a situation. These pass laws were actually introduced in 1920s. This was basically to enforce some kind of segregation or separation from the whites and the blacks. The blacks could not have the same kind of housing, the same kind of schooling, the beaches were restricted, entertainment. There were some parks, as you come across in the play, even the parks, some of the parks had a board, whites only. And beaches also, even the natural resources, they had a board put up that this part of the beach is only meant for the use of the whites. And restrooms or waiting rooms had a board for colored only. Unfortunately, these pass laws were used to harass and arrest all the politically people who were political opponents of this apartheid system. And in the year 1959, these pass laws were amended to extend and bring even the women under its control. So in the year 1960, interestingly, like our Jallianwala Bagh demonstration, in Sharpeville, a place in South Africa, a crowd of about 19,000 people gathered for a peaceful demonstration to protest against these pass laws. The pass law is like an identity card that these black South Africans had to possess with them on their body all the time and produce it to the police. And these people gathered there to protest peacefully. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of commotion, and the police began to open fire on these peaceful demonstrators, and a number of black South Africans were killed. And this particular incident, the Sharpeville massacre as it is called, began to prove as a turning point in South Africa's history, because this alerted and sensitized the international community, which began to isolate South Africa for its system of apartheid. Now, why are we talking about Sharpeville and past laws? Because in 1960 was the demonstration and Blood Knot was performed in 1961. What is the play about? In brief, the play is about two brothers. One is a fair-skinned brother called Morris. There are only two characters. Morris is the light-skinned brother and Zechariah is the dark-skinned brother. These are actually half-brothers. They are born to one mother but different fathers. These two characters actually perform the whole play, but there are a few other characters mentioned by both of them. Some of the other interesting, important characters you should remember when you are looking at the play include particularly Athol Lang, and then her brother who works in the police force, and then her friend. And then a few other characters who are mentioned are the ex-girlfriends of Zack. So Zack's is actually from the personal friend Zack's Moke, who was the black South African playwright with whom Athol Fugard actually performed a number of plays. And this play was actually performed by Athol Fugard as the light-skinned brother Morris and Zack's Moke as Zechariah, the dark-skinned brother. Now, Morris is educated and he has dreams for a better future. At the beginning of the play, we have to understand that apparently Morris seems to have come back to live with his brother Zechariah, the dark-skinned one. And Zechariah is actually like a typical black person, is illiterate and he has no dreams for future. And Zechariah actually works as a gatekeeper in a park, and his job is to prevent, interestingly, black people from entering the park. He comes back every evening with foot sores for standing for long hours. As I told you earlier, Morris apparently seems to have gone away to make his own life because he was educated and he had dreams for a better life. But then he joins Zechariah, the dark-skinned brother, in this one-room shack. And Morris is content in caring for Zechariah and saving money for a better future. Right now they are living in a very horrible and pitiable environment. And he hopes to save the money and buy a small farm for themselves and live on their own in future. This was also to alleviate themselves from their poverty and distressing situations. Zechariah, or Zack as the play calls him, has actually no interest in future. And on the other hand, he longs for his past life that he enjoyed, a carefree life and a past life where he enjoyed with a number of women. Morris, on the other hand, wants to encourage Zack to have a pen pal at least, because he has no future, no interest in life. So after a lot of debate and discussion, they both decide to go through the classifieds of the newspaper, and then they select 3 women. Out of the 3 women, Zack, who is illiterate, cannot even write, but then Morris encourages him to have a pen friend. So Morris decides to write on behalf of Zack his brother to Athol Lang, one of the three women they have selected. During this pen palship or pen friendship, their correspondence, to their utter shock, they realized that Athol Lang is actually a white woman. And that meant trouble, and big time trouble. The moment they realized this, Morris, the fair-skinned brother, tries to dissuade Zachariah because he fears that the consequences of the police or the authorities finding out that they have some kind of relationship, and they don't even want to befriend a white woman. All the more they get very scared because Athol Lang, the pen friend, has her brother who is working in the police. That meant that they could be arrested and imprisoned even without a trial. But then Zach is excited and he wants to continue this friendship just for the heck of, or for the sake of, defying the authorities and the laws. Now, as the plot continues or the story continues, it becomes interesting to note that after a few letters that are exchanged, Athol Lang continues to correspond with Zach, thinking that he is a white man. So after a few letters, Athol expresses her desire to meet Zachariah during her visit to Port Elizabeth. Now this is where they begin to have real trouble. Morris and Zach are now excited by the risk involved in such a meeting. Zach persuades Morris, the fair-skinned brother, to pass off as a white man. I hope you are getting the complexity involved. Zach is the one who is supposed to be befriending Athol Lang. Morris is corresponding on behalf of Zach. And Athol Lang, who wants to come down to meet Zach, the black man that she doesn't know. Now there is a problem, so Zach suggests that Morris, who is fair-skinned, be passed off as Zach. They're so poor, they don't have enough or the appropriate attire to pass off as a white gentleman. So whatever little savings that Zachariah was keeping in store to buy their farm in future, Zach goes and without consulting Morris spends all his saving in buying a suit, a hat, shoes, socks, umbrella, and even a handkerchief for Athol, so that he could give her something when they meet. While they are debating about the whole part of this, Morris is caught in his own dilemma. He is caught between his skin color, which is white, and his blood ties. By blood he is black, and by skin he is white. So though Zach forces him to pass off as a white man, he knows he cannot do it. At one point, Morris is caught in such a terrible moral dilemma and a crisis that he packs up a few of his belongings and decides to leave this small one-room shack in the middle of the night without telling Zach. Fortunately, the crisis is resolved when Athol writes in her next letter that she was engaged and she was getting married, and her fiancé disapproves of pen pals, and so she would not like to continue their pen friendship. So the two half-brothers return to their original state of penury, but unfortunately we find them pushed into a deeper personal and socio-economic status because of apartheid. What are the themes? Basically, as I already told you, racism is one of the biggest themes. As you look at the few instances, Zax is a gatekeeper preventing his own people from entering the park. And he comes back at the end of the day very, very tired, worn out, footsores. And then at one point he requested his superiors to transfer him to a better job or a slightly more comfortable job because of his age. But then Zack's request was mercilessly turned down. In fact, the white officer said, "Go to hell." So that meant they would be out of job, even that job. So, the play refers to the insult, the injury, and the inhumanity of racism and apartheid. Past laws, as I already explained, the Immorality Act. Now, what could be a wrong thing in having a black man and a white woman getting married, or even having a friendship? Even for that, they were so very nervous. Another interesting theme is the question of identity. Morris is a man trapped in white skin, but then he has a doubleness of racial identity. That is why I told you at the beginning of the play, he apparently went out leaving his brother, the dark-skinned one, to make his own living and have a better future. But then he's caught by the blood ties. So he comes back. But then he can neither be a black man nor can he be a white man. So who is he? What is his identity? And then when Morris wears this clothes, the white man's apparel that Zax buys for him, if you read the play, there's an interesting and a poignant point that Morris mentions. He wears everything, the sword, hat, coat, umbrella. Then, as he walks about, he really appears like a white man. But then, the distinction between reality and the illusion gets blurred. So Morris asks an interesting question. Just because I have put on the white man's clothes, he says, I don't think I have become a gentleman. He says, the skin or the clothes themselves don't make you gentlemen or white men. There is something basically inside of us which gives us this quality of gentlemanship. So it's not the fair color, skin or the clothes that make us gentlemen. A few other themes that you come across in the play are centered on the very title, Blood Knot. You come across the lovely and a heart-warming comradeship, brotherhood and symbiosis of relationship between both the brothers. Because Morris returns, and the kind of a place that they are living is actually a one-room shack. And then we realize that blood is actually always thicker than water, and that proves the point that Morris returns to care for his brother Zack. The care and concern between both of them is exemplified when Zack spends all his hard-earned money on clothes for Morris. And at one point, when they are very, very frustrated, Zack throws off his plate of food onto the floor. That's the only plate and that's the only food that they had for that night. It's poignant to watch Morris picking up that plate, throwing it into the dustbin, the food. He serves his own food and then he ends up eating just a sandwich for the night. So they take out their frustration on each other because they are knotted by blood. Another theme you can come across is capitalism. At the end of the evening, when Zack returns home very tired. Morris keeps salt water, hot salt water, and we come across Morris telling Zack, see, today I have changed the salt. Then Zack asks, why have you changed the salt? Then Morris explains, because the earlier salt was only giving you an aroma without giving you the effect of it. So Morris says, oh, that means I have been the one who's been slogging my energy out, buying the salts, and these people have been giving us and producing us salts with only aroma but without any effect. So he says, there I burn out all my energy, but he goes and makes my profit. That is capitalistic society. Another theme is poverty. They are living outside Port Elizabeth. It's a one-room shack of cardboard and corrugated steel. They have no clothes, they have no car, and it's a heavily polluted place. A few other important aspects of the play you should keep in mind when you're reading. First and foremost is the play on the word called pass. It is a pun on the word pass. No, they want to pass off. So Morris can actually pass off as a white man. And Zack tries to force Morris to pass off as a white man. But then it doesn't happen really. And then another point is the symbolism of color. You find black and white mentioned frequently throughout the play. Interestingly, the symbolism of color, black and white, separates them, these two brothers, but it also binds them. And then another interesting aspect of the play is these two brothers, though they are grown up, in their moments of frustration, they somehow try to relax by indulging and going back to their childhood games. So the playing games helps them to escape from the harsh realities of life. But then there are times when playing games also takes on a serious note, because in one of the instances in the play you come across them becoming a little violent. Suddenly Morris puts on the white man's coat and apparel and suit, and then he begins to use the abusive terms that a white man would use for a black man, and the brothers become almost violent. And then there's a motive of control that runs through the play, a control that the system of apartheid tries to wield over the black South Africans. At regular intervals in the play, any play will have some props, we call them as stage props. So at regular intervals in the play, you find the alarm clock that goes off, and that alarm clock goes off at interesting or climatic moments, and it either sets off the tension or releases or eases the tension that is and the conflict that is building up in the play. And then you also find some aspects of religion that are referred to. Now, to come to a few aspects of the theatre or the techniques that Fugard used in this play. As we looked at in the beginning of the module, Fugard was influenced by Bertolt Brecht's theatre. It is called as epic theatre. What are the differences between an epic theatre and a dramatic theatre? An epic theatre that Bertolt Brecht followed is slightly different from the dramatic theatre. Let me just encapsulate for you. While the dramatic theatre involves the audience by making them feel, an epic theatre and provokes the audience and compels them to either make decisions or to act. So on the whole, we can say that a dramatic theatre only communicates experiences, whereas epic theatre ends up in communicating the insights and asking us to take some decisive action. In conclusion, we can say that Fugard made his first international success through this play Blood Knot. It was a great success because almost after 3 decades later and a lot of struggle and international intervention, a new constitution under Nelson Mandela's leadership came into being in 1994, and Nelson Mandela chose Sharpeville to sign the constitution. And today we are happy to find that South Africa is no longer a colony, and therefore we can say Blood Knot was a great play in influencing the enfranchisement of the blacks and also other racial groups. A little later, elections were held, and that led to a coalition government with a non-white majority. And this marked the official end of the apartheid system. Fugard also acted in the movie Gandhi, and then this play was so very famous that there have been a number of media adaptations, and it was also televised in 1967, way back in 1967 in the UK and the USA. So I hope that you've enjoyed this module, and this will create an interest for you to read and look at other plays of Fugard and also this play in detail. Thank you.